So Richard Sackler, the head of the company that brought us OxyContin and the opioid crisis, claims that he and his family bear no responsibility for this crisis. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. If you share my concerns, maybe you could like this video and subscribe to this channel, maybe even click that little bell that will notify you when I post something new. So states and cities across the country are suing Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family because of the fact that they brought us the opioid crisis. Reports reveal that the Sackler family was instrumental in pushing their company to sell OxyContin as aggressively as possible and to make it so that it didn't have any of the protections against people becoming addicted to it that other pain medications had had in the past. Now, the company, Purdue Pharma, has filed bankruptcy as a result of all these claims coming against it, claiming that it doesn't have the money to pay all these claims. And in a nearly unprecedented move, the court has actually stopped the litigation not just against Purdue Pharma, the company that filed bankruptcy, but also against the Sackler family, who did not file bankruptcy. Now, that may seem odd, but you have to remember that under American law, a corporation and its owners are completely different groups. In fact, under American law, a corporation is considered a person, just like anybody else. And it can own property, it can sue and be sued. It even has freedom of speech protections, as we found out in the Citizens United case. So just because Purdue Pharma filed bankruptcy, which automatically basically protects it from any lawsuits coming against it, doesn't mean that the Sacklers, the people who own it, should be protected. Because again, they're a separate group of people. But in this case, the bankruptcy court actually stayed the litigation against the family as well as the company. Why does this matter? Well, you have to remember that when a person or a company file bankruptcy, they basically open up their financial records to everybody, including the creditors. And the creditors in this case are us, the states and the municipalities that have suffered as a result of this crisis. So the Sacklers are arguing in court that they should be let off the hook from any further claims against them if they give $4.5 billion to the states and municipalities suing them. Now, that may sound like a lot of money, and it is, except for the fact that over the past few years, the family has taken out more than $10 billion. So in other words, the family basically took money out of the company for themselves so that the company then didn't have the money to pay those claims to all the people who've been hurt by the opioid crisis. As a result of that, then, the company files bankruptcy because it doesn't have the money to pay all its creditors. And the family gives $4.5 billion to settle all claims both against the company and the family, getting to keep more than $5.5 billion that they've just taken out in the past few years as a result of the sales of OxyContin. You have to remember that Purdue Pharma's profits come almost exclusively from OxyContin, which is a blockbuster drug. And as always, I'll post links to the relevant articles down below. And if you don't think the family knows they're getting away with a crime here, you're kidding yourself. I mean, the New York Attorney General Letitia James has found all sorts of assets that are being hidden by the family, trying to be protected from litigation and from the bankruptcy court. And the family has said that if they aren't personally protected from any further liability, they're just not going to settle at all. So basically, they're holding a gun to the heads of the communities that really need resources to help deal with the crisis that the Sacklers have helped create. I mean, just think of all the police calls that result from opioid overdoses, or people going to the hospital who might not be insured because, of course, they're addicted to drugs and can't work. These costs are all borne by us, the taxpayers, and having some funds from the company that caused this, that's responsible for this crisis, might actually help us pay these costs. Well, as it turns out, there's a split in the states as to which ones think they should accept this settlement versus ones which say, no, the Sacklers need to contribute more money than they are. And not terribly surprisingly, the split can be determined largely by which party they're in. So the Republicans, who've shown themselves to be owned by the pharmaceutical industry, are in favor of this settlement and are in favor of protecting the Sacklers from any further litigation. On the other side, the attorneys general who say that more money needs to be paid for the responsibility for this crisis that has been caused especially in light of all the money that the Sackler family has taken out of the company, are almost all, wait for it, Democrats. As it turns out, there's one exception, and it's the Idaho Attorney General, who's a Republican, who says that this settlement is not sufficient for the people of Idaho. Well, at least we know there's one Republican who's looking out for more than the pocketbooks of the very rich. What's more is that Democratic Representatives Carolyn Maloney and Mark DeSaulnier have introduced legislation in Congress to make it that the Sacklers can't get out of liability for this crisis simply by having the company file bankruptcy. They should be subjected to the same kind of financial scrutiny that the company is subjected to if they're going to escape future liability for this crisis that they caused. And you have to remember that Donald Trump, when he was president, said that addressing the opioid crisis was a priority. And in fact, he appointed Kellyanne Conway, his former campaign manager, to be in charge of that effort. Well, we know exactly what happened there. During his presidency, the opioid crisis only got worse, substantially worse, actually. I mean, this opioid crisis is a real public health crisis. According to the CDC, nearly 841,000 people have died from drug overdoses, with over 70% of those being from opioids. That's more people than died from the COVID crisis. Now, supporters of the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma say that, but most of that is from heroin or fentanyl, which are not manufactured by Purdue Pharma, which is true. But what happens is people will get addicted to the opioids through OxyContin. And then, because of their addiction, they'll frequently lose their jobs and lose their health insurance, and then the only place they have to turn is to heroin and fentanyl, which they can buy on the streets cheaply. So there's a direct line from OxyContin to heroin deaths. And that's the liability that these Democratic attorneys general and members of Congress are looking to enforce against the Sackler family. Well, if you agree with me or disagree with me or have any questions about the opioid crisis, please feel free to leave a comment down below. And if you could like this video and maybe subscribe to this channel, that'd be a huge help. I'll see you in the next video. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.